Markets open. Well, to come back to equities, we have a very important guest joining us now. Dhananjay Sinha of Emkay Global Financial Services has joined us ahead of their Emkay Confluence, which starts. Dhananjay, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us. We had an interesting chat with Mr. Karwa and Mr. Kacholia yesterday. Tell us a little more about this conference. What have you already touched base with some of your foreign fund investors as well as the domestic funds? What's the mood there? Does it look like we are going to coast along to 9,000 anytime soon?
Yeah, I think, Lata, thank you for inviting me. So today we have about 46 companies for the conference out of the total 100 that we are doing over the 2 days. There will be the balanced number of companies on Friday, that's tomorrow. So broadly, the profile of the companies that we have lined up today includes retail, IT sector, a considerable amount of coverage of banking and financial services. And so the thing is that we are giving a lot of flavor in terms of rural and urban nuances. So there are a lot of questions that investors have with respect to these areas. I think from a market standpoint, it does look like people will be looking at what the earnings trajectory would look like. This quarter, the first quarter, we have seen there is a sort of a betterment as far as sales growth is concerned, primarily arising from a sort of a uptick in the commodity prices, and also that there has been a considerable amount of government spending. There is a considerable amount of focus on rural demand. If you look at what the governments are doing, both at the central and the state government levels. So we are basically trying to assess through our conference and through our meetings across multiple companies whether that is actually reflected on the ground and what companies are basically saying as a trajectory going forward. So I think that's the broader context. I think the key things that we will be looking at would include, if you look at the urban discretionary spend, whether that is actually moving up or not. Over the past 2 years, we have seen a very lackluster demand over there. Clearly, rural demand is something everybody is waiting for, with good monsoon, and also the fact that there is a lot of thrust from a policy standpoint. So we have a lot of representation there, especially with respect to the financial sector companies which have high exposure to rural lending. Okay. We have a lot of NBFCs over here. So I think that's the broader set of companies that we're looking at.
Okay. Dhananjay, hi, good morning. Of course, by the end of the day, we'll get to know what the mood is like. But just talking a little more about that rural focus, because that was a theme that, yes, Mr. Kacholia was talking about and Mr. Karwa were talking about yesterday as well. This is a theme that people have made money on over the last 6 to 8 months. Do you think there's still more scope here? Because even off late, we've seen names like Jain Irrigation, UPL, Escorts rally quite a bit.
Yes, I think, see, the key thing is that, you have a lot of focus on this, on rural from a government standpoint. We have seen that in the budget there is a considerable amount of allocation there, and there is a supplementary demand which has been passed by the parliament, which also includes a significant focus on rural. So I think there is a bulk of flow in terms of demand that will ensue going forward. While the stock prices may have actually reacted or sort of preempted some of these recoveries, I think the broader context is that whether the business for these companies will strengthen going forward or not. Clearly, our view is that it would. And as the numbers pan out, I think some of these stocks will be supported, and possibly there will be more upside to these stocks. So we'll have to really look at it. It pans across multiple sectors, which would include many of these FMCG companies, auto sectors. You'll have a lot of banking and financial services companies which have high exposure there. And a whole host of equipment manufacturers, etc. that will be gaining out of it. So that is something that we'll have to really look at it, as it pans out. clearly as of now it appears that the government is considerably focused towards that, and especially from a political standpoint also that becomes very relevant. It will imply a lot of fiscal commitment, but we'll have to really play it out, and till the time at least till the time it lasts at least.
Okay.
So I'm really looking at that and as a improved business dynamics for the rural sector.
Dhananjay, hi, good morning. But that's rural consumption, of course. What about the urban discretionary consumption? That space also did well, but the valuations there are a bit of a problem. So how would you approach that space now?
No, So I think valuations generally is a problem. So what we are basically looking at is the business dynamics and whether that is improving or not. Now, from a valuation standpoint, there will be a situation where there will be exuberance and there will be volatility thereafter, and there will be bouts of those periods where we will have very intense volatility. But what we are basically looking at is whether the business is improving for the various sectors or not. So if you look at the urban side of things, clearly over the past 2 years or so, the demand has been very lackluster, and we have seen that compensation growth for companies has actually declined to something like 3% if you look at a whole much broader set of companies, and that is almost like a 25 years low. Clearly employment is not growing that much and compensation is not really growing so fast. So but on the contrary, what we are also seeing is that retail lending is growing at something like 18-20%. So clearly consumers are leveraging, and in the context that you have 7th pay commission that will pan out, given the context here that the entire 7th pay commission recommendation would largely be given out this year, it is likely that the leverage for the urban consumers will also increase, quite apart from the fact that you might have a sort of a better disposable income through the 7th pay commission, and also that with the top line growth of companies improving, it is possible that the compensation growth for employees could actually rise. So clearly we are also looking at some improvement in urban demand as well. Overall, what we are considering both from a rural and urban standpoint, that there will be a significant impetus to consumer demand, and a large part of it also would be attributable to the reflationary policies followed by the government through its fiscal measures, and also the fact that RBI has been accommodative. So all these things will translate into significant significant consumption demand, both from urban and rural sector.
Okay, thank you very much, Dhananjay, for that comprehensive analysis of where Emkay sees growth opportunities coming and which companies we should be concentrating on. We have been running all the companies that you have invited, even as you were speaking, and we will touch base with you and your team after the conference to learn what you have picked up. Thank you very much and have a great confluence out there. Okay,
thank you very much. Bye.
Okay, it's time we got back to some trading strategies.